I think it was in 1963, and it was with the nurses at the Montefiore Home. I was doing a group with people who were diagnosed with a dementia in the special service department. And the nurses then at that time were still doing reality orientation. So, and when I started doing my group in 63, my training as a group worker is to elicit participation and give people roles that make them feel that are familiar roles. So, and that's reality orientation is telling people where they are and so on in the day and the date. I tried that for a while in my group. I brought the calendar with me, big calendar, and made it very fancy. And we had a chairman of our group, and I handed her the calendar, and she was supposed to say, "Good morning, I am your chairman, and today is Tuesday, October," and so on. So when I asked her, for example, "Mrs. Freeman, what is the day? And who are you? What are you going to be doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm looking for the percentage of the death rate." So she was totally in her own reality and very imaginative. And when I tried to say, "You are the Montefiore Home and this is Tuesday," she couldn't care less, and neither did anybody else. So it didn't take me very long to step into the reality of the old person, of Mrs. Freeman, Mrs. Gogolick, people in my group. Mrs. Gogolick would always hold on to her purse, and the nurses would always take it away from her because they thought she would lose it or drop it. And I soon realized that her purse was her identity. It was a symbol of who she was. She was a secretary her whole life, and she was still a secretary. She was still working for GE like she always had. And to tell her, "You're in the Montefiore Home, you're not working for GE," was cruel. And luckily, she ignored me most of the time when I did that. But when she didn't ignore me, she felt horrible. She had no way of coping. She never learned coping skills in her life. She had to hold on to one role, and that was she was a secretary at General Electric. And I learned through her and many other people that in order to survive to very old age, especially if you don't know where you are anymore, you've got to begin to develop ways of coping with loss and fear. And you got to do that when you're younger. You can't wait till you get really old because you can't. And so the people that I worked with, I was stepped into their role, and wherever Mrs. Freeman wanted to go, she went, and the group went with her. I was trained in group work to help people communicate emotionally with each other rather than logically. And people's emotions were very, very clear, even though their cognitive faculties weren't. So when people were sad or angry, this is where I went. And I said, Mr. Trusser, you're really angry today." And I mirrored his emotions. And that helped him get angrier, in the beginning. His anger heightened, and then it reached a certain peak, and then it came down. And all by himself, he would say, "Albert Trussler, shut up." And he knew what day it was. He knew what year it was. I didn't have to tell him. And so the people actually taught me about validation. Well, most of them ignored me. I had a group, every week or twice a week. The others, the director of the home, in a big staff meeting with everybody there, he said about me, "She's as crazy as the people she works with." So that was they thought I was nuts. And they tolerated me mainly because my father was the director when I started this group. And so he was a group worker. He was a psychologist. And so he supported me. And my mother was the head of social service. But when they retired, no one really understood what I was doing. First place I gave a workshop was in Puerto Rico at the Gerontological Association, because I would submit a lot of papers of what I was doing, like group work, and I called it group work in a home for disoriented aging. And then also what really helped the rest of the world become aware, because everyone was doing reality orientation, was my husband, whom I met at the Montefiore Home. I had come back to Cleveland from New York, and I was divorced, and I had 2 little girls. And I think my mother wanted to fix me up. Her desire was to have me get married again. So she had a big party, a board meeting, with all the members of the board of the Montefiore Home. And she asked, who that now is my husband, Ed, he was a filmmaker. And he had made a film of the home a couple of years ago. So she arranged it that I would sit right next to him and that he would show the film he made of the home. And she encouraged the members of the board to fund another film that Ed would make, and I was to do the script. So that's really how we got together. And I think the combination, Ed is very visual, and I'm more auditory, so the combination of the 2 of us, because we did a lot of bickering back and forth, because he would want to keep something in. I said, no, that sounds terrible. Oh, it looks wonderful. But I think that's why our films were successful.